Hi, everyone. We're going to kick it off in a second. I just have one, I guess, point of logistics for people who speak Spanish. Si hablan español y quieren traducción, tenemos dos computadoras atrás con audífonos o cascos que puedes utilizar para oír la interpretación o traducción. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. So, hi everyone, good evening. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Candace Perry, and I am the Environmental Justice Director at New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection. I'm so glad to be joined here with my two fellow panelists, Commissioner Sean LaTourette, who is the Commissioner of the NJDEP, and Lisa Garcia, who is the Region 2 Regional Administrator at the US EPA. So we are really delighted to be here with all of you to discuss environmental justice in Atlantic County. Unfortunately, there are some communities, because of their race, income, and their ability to speak English well, that experience more environmental burdens like air and water pollution and flooding and extreme heat than others. Those same communities also tend to have less environmental benefits like green space and trees that cool and clean the air and soak up stormwater runoff. We know that environmental justice issues come in many forms and that they do not always take place in very urbanized and dense places. Unfortunately, they span across every region of our state, including in smaller and suburban communities throughout the state and here in Atlantic County. We also know that Atlantic County has been and will be on the front lines of weather-related events like flooding and sea level rise as our climate gets warmer, and that the most vulnerable residents in Atlantic County will be hit hard. This is why it is so important for government to hear directly from those that are most impacted so that we can be informed of your lived experiences and use that feedback to color the work that we do every day. So this is our 8th and final environmental justice community engagement session of the year, and we're so thrilled to be here in Atlantic City for it. So far on our tour in 2022, we've made stops in Burlington City and Burlington County, Elizabeth and Union County, South Toms Urban Ocean County, Phillipsburg in the Highlands, Passaic City and Passaic County, Bridgeton and Cumberland County, and Long Branch and Monmouth County. And so this is our final stop, and we hope to be in other locations in 2023. So I'll run through our agenda, which is very simple. Soon I will open the floor to all of you all to ask your questions and to raise your comments of concern for us to listen and to engage in some discussion. Before we do that, I do just want to go over a few housekeeping notes in which I encourage you to please limit your question or your comment to environmental justice issues about Atlantic County. Any other issues outside of those pertaining to Atlantic County, please feel free to come up to us after the event and we can talk to you about that offline. And so with that, I just want to turn the floor over to Commissioner Sean LaTourette for some opening remarks.
Well, good. That picks up well. And I'm pretty loud, so I usually don't have an issue if it didn't. Thank you to Second Baptist. And I understand that the pastor's not with us, but to the extent that there are members of this congregation that are present today, thank you for opening your doors and your community to us, to hosting us. To Councilman Shabazz, thank you for being here. Recognizing that we are in your district. And I recently had the chance to sit with Mayor Small last month about a number of issues and appreciate his partnership and that of folks throughout the county in working on how we improve our residents' experience of their environment and how true it is what Candace mentioned, that we have areas throughout our state where there are high degrees of pollution, where there are some struggles with issues of flooding or extreme weather events that are more pointed, more severe than in other areas of the state. But certainly, in every single municipality, in every single county, every corner of New Jersey, our residents are dealing with some form of environmental issue or another. And if we at the Department of Environmental Protection, whose job it is to ensure the good care of our environment, of the air and land and water upon which our residents and all of our businesses depend, if we want to do that job well, then we have to hear directly from our residents about their lived experience and how they are impacted by environmental issues or government decision-making on environmental issues, so that we can best design policies and approaches to ensure that folks share equally in the benefits of environmental protection, and that we are all doing our best to take good care of our communities and the environment that we share, and that's why we're here. There is no question that's too small, no issue that is too large. We can't promise you that we have the answer off the top of our heads to every question that you may have or issue you may like to raise. But our point of being here is to hear directly from you and then find the right resource to pair with your issues so that we can be responsive to them. And so we'll take plenty of notes and folks' information to the extent you're willing to share that, and we can contact you in the days ahead. Candace, or Director Perry, and her team do a lot of follow-up following these sessions to make sure that we are connecting back with our communities and understanding that this is not the end of any conversation or engagement, but just the beginning. And we're here to be here for you. That is our job. So thank you again for having us, and look forward to what folks either here in person or online may have to raise. And it's a pleasure to always have our federal partners with us. The Environmental Protection Agency Regional Administrator Garcia, thank you for joining us as always.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Yes, always a pleasure to join Commissioner LaTourette and Candace on these tours throughout New Jersey. We really appreciate the partnership. And I have to say, since it's the last one for the year, a huge thank you to you and your whole team, because when we join, it's always very organized, and it's so great to get out together. So EPA is also in the business of, we like to say, taking it to the streets, really making sure that we are listening to communities, in communities, understanding what the issues are, what the concerns are. And there's also kind of a new effort under the Biden-Harris administration, a whole of government approach and partnerships. And so that's why it's really important to partner with communities. Thank you, Councilman Shabazz, for being here, with local government, with state government, New Jersey DEP, and obviously other federal agencies. And so this is part of the work that we need to do to really make sure that everyone has access to a clean environment, to a safe environment, and obviously the future for our children, to make sure that we provide that. So once again, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the Second Baptist Church for hosting this, and everyone who came out today. I really appreciate it. And I'll be here throughout the evening to answer questions, and I also have Olivia Glenn, who is the Chief of Staff at EPA, with me, and Amisha is here. Who else from EPA? There, back there. So if you have questions, anyway, we're also available. So thank you, and we will turn it over back to Candace. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. Yes, I was just going to go to you, Councilman Shabazz. Thank you.
First of all, let me say good evening to everyone. Thank you, Commissioner, Director. Thank you, Director, for coming down. Normally, when a church or a religious institution hosts a meeting, the pastor is normally here. I felt compelled to say that the only reason that Reverend Days is not here, he is just coming back from an extensive trip to South Africa. so he's experiencing the jet lag and getting
Ah,
used to
okay.
time.
Sure.
So I wanted to make sure that I said that on the record so people would not think that when Ms. Akbar reached out to me, I reached out to Reverend Days as a natural place to have this event, and he opened his doors. But that's the only reason he's not here, and I just wanted everyone to know that. Other than that, he would be here to make his own presentation and to welcome you, to say thank you for coming to Atlantic City. Thank you for highlighting the environmental issues. Environmental racism is real, and environmental discrimination is real.
Yes, it is.
Environmental disparity is real. And let me just put on my NAACP hat. I happen to be the president of Atlantic City branch of NAACP. I'm happy to hold that position. The NAACP at the national level has environmental racism and environmental justice as an issue. At the state level, we have it as an issue. At the local level, we have it as an issue. And we are so glad that you three outstanding government officials are here to hear from the community and to put a spotlight on the environment. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much again. I wanted to say that Reverend Days would have been here. He is a partner in social justice activities. This happens to be my ward, so I'm a little biased. But every time we ask for Second Baptist to host a meeting, a summit, a panel, they're always open. So again, thank you, welcome, and we appreciate your efforts. 8 hearings, that's a lot. And we need that. The environment must be addressed. It's not a political issue, it's not a partisan issue, it's a human issue we must address.
Yes,
Again, thank
yes,
you
it
so
is.
much.
That's right.
Thank you.
Councilman, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll be sure to stop in when I'm in AC next and share my gratitude with Reverend myself. And in your capacity with the NAACP, I will say thank you for the continued partnership, because we throughout our work on this particular tour, but more broadly on our work to further the promise of environmental justice, the NAACP has been such a good partner to us and provided points of connectivity and guidance, and we're grateful, so thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I do want to give the floor briefly to Alex Salagi. We have another government official in the room. He's with the New Jersey District of the United States Attorney General's Office and serves as the Environmental Justice Coordinator there. I know he has a few remarks to give that might be of interest to the audience. Alex?
Thank you, panel, and thank you so much for allowing me to take some time out of this important event. My name is Alex Salagi. I'm an Assistant United States Attorney here at the District of New Jersey U.S. Attorney's Office. We have offices in Trenton, in Newark, and Camden, but our work covers the entire state. I'm also here because I am the new Environmental Justice Coordinator at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I wanted to explain a little bit about what the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing in the environmental space, and specifically what the Environmental Justice Team is doing in that area. Well, first of all, we're all here today because we recognize how important it is to protect the environmental rights of the people of New Jersey. And we also recognize that there's got to be a plan to make sure that those rights are protected. I want to explain what the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey and the Environmental Justice Team is doing as part of that plan. So first, as some of you may know, the U.S. Attorney's Office is part of the Department of Justice. Our job is to enforce the nation's environmental laws here in New Jersey. We created recently the Environmental Justice Team to enter into the environmental justice enforcement space. In doing so, we are jumping into a program that has existed and been really amazingly progressed by some of the folks on the panel here and their teams, including EPA, DEP, and OEJ. We created the Environmental Justice Team because it's part of a larger way of thinking within the Department of Justice about the ways that we think about protecting the health and safety and the environmental rights of the people of New Jersey. So we created the Environmental Justice Team really to do two things. The first is to enforce the nation's environmental laws here in New Jersey and try to assist the EPA and the DEP wherever we can, but also to ensure that we're enforcing those laws and to seek out those who are the most vulnerable, some of the most, the worst impacted parts of our communities, of our neighborhood, who are affected by violations of these environmental laws. And there are three ways that the environmental justice team in New Jersey tries to do that. Well, the first is we think about what laws we can enforce. As part of the Department of Justice, as I mentioned, we have the ability to enforce federal environmental laws, laws that were created down in Washington, D.C. Some of you have heard of a lot of these very well-known laws, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, but there are also laws that some people may not know as well, like the Toxic Substances Control Act, and that act allows us to enforce violations that have to do with lead paint in people's houses, different forms of toxic substances, things that we see on a day-to-day have a real impact on all communities, including environmental justice communities. So those are the laws that we have the ability to enforce. The second thing is, who do we work with? As I mentioned before, we're joining into a very long line of people at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level who are already concerned about these exact issues. We look at our role on the environmental justice team to be another asset to the EPA, the DEP, and to the members of the community to lend a hand to make sure that we can track down violators and make sure that we can provide solutions, that we can get criminal penalties where appropriate, or get civil fines or injunctions where appropriate. That's what we have the power to do and who we work with. Now, third and most importantly, and one of the reasons why I think it's so important for me to be here, is to let you know that the success of the environmental justice team largely depends on the community, on the people who live in New Jersey getting in touch with the environmental justice team and letting us know about issues that you are concerned about potential environmental law violations, about concerns about your own health and safety. We are there to support you, but we understand that there's nobody better suited to tell the folks in the U.S. Attorney's Office what is going on in Atlantic County than the people who live here. So we're here because we want to hear from you. We encourage any kind of communication that you would like to have with our office. And to that extent, if there's really anything you take away from what I've said so far, it's this, which is that we've created multiple ways for people in the community to directly reach me and the rest of the environmental justice team to provide complaints about environmental issues or issues about health and safety, to raise concerns, or simply to ask questions. You can email us, you can email me, you can call me, you can write me a letter, you can fill out a formal complaint. All of these different avenues of reaching out to us are identified in one main place, and it's on our website, on the U.S. Attorney's Office website. And I wrote it down to make sure that I don't mess it up, but it's justice.gov/USAO-NJ. That's USAO as in U.S. Attorney's Office. So again, that's just...
Get that in the chat for folks who are online. If Nadia or Ana Maria, if you'd be so kind as pop that in there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. And so again, it's justice.gov/USAO-NJ. As the Commissioner mentioned, no issue is too big, no issue is too small. We encourage you to reach out to us to let us know about any issues that you may have. We will try to solve it. If we can't, we will get you in touch with one of our many partners at the federal, state, or local level who can help you solve those issues. So again, thank you for giving me a few moments of time today. To the panel, thank you for letting me speak on this important thing. I'll be here throughout the panel, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to talk afterwards. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it, Alex. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Looking forward to the continued partnership. So with that, we'll turn the floor over to you. What's going to happen now is I'll ask you to form a line behind the mic in the center of the room if you're able. If you're unable, we can bring a mic to you. And the floor is yours to ask your question or to say your comment or concern. And for those of you online, don't think that we're forgetting about you. We see you. We're monitoring the chat, so you can put your question or comment in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand function, should be in the lower either left or right-hand corner of your Zoom window. You can raise your hand, and we will call on you to unmute yourself, where you will orally be allowed to raise your comment or your concern that way as well. So with that, we'll take the first gentleman. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christian Moreno Rodriguez. I am an Atlantic City resident. Do you need my address or anything like that?
You don't need to go, sorry, your address.
I appreciate that. I'm an Atlantic City resident, and I also have a lot of family in Pleasantville, New Jersey, which is right next to us, our neighbors. And so I just wanted to ask a couple of administrative or legislative questions, specifically to our state representatives. Before I do that, I did want to give kudos to you folks for having Spanish translation on site. I really wish locally some of our city council members throughout the county took notice as well. We represent a lot, and we advocate for a lot of our immigrant community here in the county. One of the problems we have to overcome sometimes is that language barrier, and getting our folks to city council meetings or planning board meetings or zoning board meetings where some of these environmental justice issues are taking place.
And Christian, when you say we, are you associated with a group of some kind?
Yes, sir.
And if so, can you share?
Absolutely, I appreciate that. We are with El Pueblo Unido of Atlantic City, and that in English stands for a Community United of Atlantic City, and it has kind of old school, our name has old school activist connotations to it. And basically, you know, we've been in our community for a couple years now. We fought the good fight on immigrant justice issues, but like our council member mentioned earlier, environmental justice issues are also racial justice issues, and that's why we're here tonight. If I can, I just wanted to, and I really give kudos to our federal representative from the Attorney General's office, but I had a question on a state law. On September 18th of 2020, Governor Phil Murphy signed New Jersey's environmental justice law, and that requires the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to really evaluate the environmental and public health impacts of certain facilities on overburdened communities when reviewing certain permit applications. I guess what I wanted to see, and I see that there's a lot of orders, there's a lot of rule notices, there's a lot of hearings. I wanted to see what the current status of that law is in terms of being implemented into place. And then I wanted to see if our state representatives can kind of give, in layman's terms, an oversight of how working class folks can use that law to put a complaint in or put in a request for the state to kind of look at some of these permit applications. Specifically, I see that the law requires the Department of Environmental Protection to evaluate the environmental and public health impacts on the following facilities of overburdened communities when reviewing specific types of applications, and that includes transfer stations or solid waste facilities.
Yes.
And so if you can please explain, and then at the same time, in layman terms, because
Yes, absolutely.
we're not lawyers.
I'm gonna do my best, and thankfully, Director Perry, whose office is deeply engaged in both the administration of the environmental justice law, but to your point, you had mentioned how the public may make a complaint and seek assistance. So we'll do those two things. So first, the New Jersey's environmental justice law, which was advocated for by Senator Troy Singleton and many other legislators in New Jersey, and we were lucky enough to work with them in shaping that law, and then Governor Murphy signed it in 2020. Now, the way environmental law works is you can have a law that is 6 pages long like this one, but it doesn't implement itself unless a regulatory body like the DEP in the state setting makes specific rules that tell people the finer points of how it works. And so we have spent the last year and a half in a deep community engagement, stakeholder engagement process where we worked with community members and parts of the regulated community, businesses, to put together the rules that will implement this law. Those rules were put out for public comment earlier this year. That public comment has closed, and we are close to finalizing our adoption of the rule, which would make it fully effective early next year. And what it means in brief is that for certain types of facilities, when a permit is sought from the DEP, and those types of facilities could be a recycling center or a new landfill, certain types of large manufacturing facilities, power plants, when those types of facilities are seeking permits, the DEP has to evaluate environmental justice issues that historically have not been evaluated under the law. And it requires upfront engagement on the part of that applicant, the business owner, for example, or the power plant operator, to engage with the community first before the permit application is submitted to the DEP, and to evaluate, using information that we provide, certain public health and environmental stressors that we want to make sure do not lead to disproportionate, unjust results. For example, some places have higher air pollution than others. And so we would want to look at those facilities that might add more air pollution to a place that already has a lot. We would want to look at them harder. We would want to work with the company that is seeking that permit to look at ways that they can reduce that pollution so that it doesn't add an unjust, disproportionate amount of more pollution to the community. It's what we would call a community-centered approach, hearing from people first about their reaction to something that is sought to be located in their community, and working with the applicant not to say no to new development and new economic activity, but to look at how we can pursue that activity in a way that is most protective of the community that we serve. And some might ask, well, why don't we do that already? It's not really the way environmental law works. The way environmental law works is to look over large geographic areas and ask if we have too much pollution. It does not zero in to the particular community where something is located. And so this is the first time that we'll do that in 50 years of environmental law. It's a big deal. And so early next year, we'll begin doing that in earnest, although we've been practicing the spirit and intent of that law since it was passed.
Thank you. Just one last question. It could be a yes or no. I don't want to take up too much time for the next questions. At the end of the day, say it goes through city council and through the local county commissioners, and it's gone through the local approval process. Does the state, with this law, at the end of the day, have the authority or the power to reject this permit application, regardless of what is said at the local level, based on your own analysis and not city council's analysis?
If you're talking about a specific facility or specific permit, I'm happy to talk about that sort of on the sidelines of this meeting. But generally speaking, how do I put this in layman's terms? Different levels of government have different responsibilities, right? So a facility that that requires an environmental permit, that can only be sought and received from the Department of Environmental Protection. A local or county government would look at different things. Does a development correspond, for example, to to a local zoning ordinance or construction code, but only the DEP is able to provide permits that relate to pollution generating facilities. And so just because some development, any kind, right, has a permit from a local government does not mean that they are entitled to a permit from the Department of Environmental Protection. And in fact, every local land use approval is conditioned on the receipt of all environmental permits. They are independent processes. They should be pursued together, concurrently, always.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I just want to pick up on the latter part of your question about how can community, people from communities and residents get involved in this process and really let their voice be heard. So there's a couple of kind of mechanisms to do that. One is through, and the commissioner mentioned this, our administrative order that he signed, which in essence mirrors the spirit and the intent of the law until the law is finalized and adopted. So if you're curious, it's Administrative Order 21-25. And so basically what that says is that we're going to require applicants to do increased public engagement with the overburdened community that they're proposing to be located in. And so we have a list of all of those hearings that those applicants are required to have on the Office of Environmental Justice website, and we can send you the link. But those are opportunities for engagement. And so we encourage any member of the public to show up at those meetings and to lift up their voices and their opinions about the application in question. And then all of those comments and the transcript of how that meeting runs comes back to the Department of Environmental Protection for consideration and for potential conditions that can be set on those permit applications. So that's kind of talking about the interim of before the rules are adopted and final. Once the rules are adopted and final, again, that public hearing process will still be in play. People from the public have opportunities to, again, comment during those settings. But then outside of the environmental justice law and kind of that mechanism, anybody, anywhere, especially within an overburdened community, is encouraged to reach out to my office, the Office of Environmental Justice, because there may be environmental justice concerns that are outside of the realm and the scope and the universe of the environmental justice law. So you were asking about transfer stations and recycling centers, right? There are only 8 specific types of facilities that are defined by the law, but we know that environmental justice issues span the gamut, and so there may be other solutions that we can brainstorm together if you reach out to my office.
And the one last thing that we can put on there is that if you have an immediate environmental concern, if you think that there is something askew coming from a particular facility, or maybe you're on the water and you see an oil slick, or you are encountering an environmental issue in your community, we have both a hotline and a smartphone application, and that's called the Warn DEP app. So if you have any kind of a smartphone, if you're in the Apple store, or the Samsung, what they call that store, I'm not sure. There is an ability to download the Warn DEP app, and you can make a complaint that goes directly into our communications center, and someone will respond to that complaint.
Please.
Thank you so much for your time, Commissioner and everyone on this panel. My name is Irvin Omar Moreno Rodriguez, and I am the chair of El Pueblo Unido of Atlantic City y Pueblos Cercanos, which the last part means and surrounding communities. So I don't mean to be facetious in any way, but I was wondering, Commissioner, have you taken a look at the environmental justice map of Atlantic County recently?
Yes.
Okay.
And I worked with our team in building the map.
Okay. Because I have taken a look at that map, and I live in Pleasantville, New Jersey, and I've lived in Atlantic County my entire life. And looking at that map, Pleasantville is in trouble. And I know that you were giving a general statement previously, but I want to know what the New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection is going to do with this proposed trash transfer station in Pleasantville, New Jersey. This is not new news. This has been in the works for a long time, and the scenario is real. It's been passed through the Pleasantville City Council. It's been supported by the Board of Commissioners here in Atlantic County. It's been proposed and supported by other individuals that really don't see the environmental harm and the racism that this project brings to Atlantic County. So I really want to know, I'm desperate, what the plan is to protect the people.
So I have a few questions, and they'd probably be best for us to address on the sidelines of this.
Okay.
I am not certain, as I'm sitting here, the stage of any permit review before the DEP on that particular site, and I'm not giving you a line.
No.
It would be unusual for me to know the fate of any one permit application within a large agency.
Right.
But if the facility that is proposed, if the facility seeking approval is within an overburdened community, as indicated on that map that you're referring to, then it would be subject to our administrative order process, unless by the time they seek a permit, if the permit is not already being requested from the DEP, then when a permit is sought, it could be that the rule itself is in place. We anticipate that will be by February. So they will be processed on one side or the other, either under the existing administrative order or under the EJ rule itself. And so my answer to what will we do about it is we will do what the law tells us to do about it, right? That's why we've worked with the legislature in developing the law, and why we've worked so hard on the rules, because we mean it. But I will be happy to, coming from this session, understand personally what's going on there, and we will get back to you.
Thank you so much, because if you look at the map, which I have a couple of times, Pleasantville is already in trouble. I mean, you look at the
Can you explain
hazardous.
to me what you mean by in trouble?
So there is a legend with the map, and there are hazardous waste sites already. I think there's around 3 just around my house alone. And you're talking about building another trash transfer station in Pleasantville, which will not only affect Pleasantville. What we're trying to make everyone understand is it's going to affect Los Pueblos Cercanos. It's going to affect the surrounding communities. I know that the city of Ventnor has graciously passed a resolution against the proposed trash transfer station. And like I said, there are several people in the community that have gone religiously to these meetings at the county level, at the city level. We were just at the Pleasantville City Council meeting today, and we had to rush over to this meeting today because they decided to do a special meeting at City Hall today. So this can be very, it's a daunting task to take this on.
Yes, it is.
So my question to you then is, what is the next step? What can we do to fix this?
I will tell you that you're doing the most important thing, in that you are raising your concern in all the places that it is important to raise your concern, including here in this room. That people hear your plea is alone, in and of itself, important. And I mean that. And yes, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to always have to raise your voice and stand up for your rights. It's why this law was passed, to make it less exhausting, hopefully. And we're all committed to that in the Murphy administration. I know that's the same for EPA. Candace, because she's on top of everything, just pointed out that we at the DEP do not have an application for this.
Okay.
One will inevitably come, and it will have our attention.
Thank you. And just to follow up, please have a meeting in Pleasantville, New Jersey, particularly with the mayor, because we're not only dealing, and you know, I say that, you know, with a light heart, but you know, we're still dealing with the effects of these super sites, you know, from
I
the
know.
60s and 70s. You have a high rate of asthma in Pleasantville and other diseases, particularly, you know, and I don't know what the scientific term is, but cancer of the brain, and no one's speaking about it.
And
So
I will,
please,
I'll say this, that one of the most important things about this, about our environmental justice law and the community-centered approach that it propagates is that oftentimes the way that regulatory agencies function is to engage with the regulated community, and there will often be public notice that something is occurring. There will be a chance to have a public comment that something is occurring. What this law does is it brings it into the community. So it is required under this law and under our administrative order, that is sort of the interim approach, is to have a hearing in the community on the application specific to its environmental permitting, so that there is an opportunity for the community who will experience the thing to be heard directly by the applicant and by the DEP. And so that will have to happen.
okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And
welcome.
I'll just, if I can for a second, I'll just add from the EPA perspective that we did not look at maps before we got, or I didn't, but it is interesting that you're talking about like cumulative impacts, cluster of facilities, and so we'll take that back because there may be an opportunity for us to work together, like everyone's saying, that there are kind of environmental justice initiatives, but there's also Superfund sites, and there's also some funding for brownfields and also cleanups. Anyway, so we'll make sure to take that back and see, you know, once again, how we can partner and work together and get back to you. Thank you for
Thank you
raising
so
the
much.
issues.
Thank you.
One of EPA's important jobs is to hold me accountable to my values. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Declementi, and I live in Hamilton Township. Behind our property is about 20,000 tires that were dumped on a fellow's property. And I really haven't known where to take this, and I stumbled upon this meeting, and it said, "Tell us." So it's, I did some research so I could let you know where it's at. It's Block 877, Lot 15 in Atlantic County, and it's Hamilton Township.
Can you say that block number one more time?
Block 877, Lot 15. Okay, it's
In which county? I'm sorry.
it's Atlantic County, and it's
Oh,
Hamilton
Atlantic,
Township.
okay.
And
Oh,
and
okay, I got it, thanks.
the tires have been there 30 years now, getting bigger and bigger, but the fellow that did that, he died, okay? It's part of 3 properties that own it. The grandmom, then I guess the brothers and sisters, they own the property, but their brother died who did all the tire work. And my family's property is right next to this. There is a piece of public land in between. But the mosquitoes are terrible, and I know they're coming up with mosquitoes that are supposed to stop the problem, but it's like mosquitozill is out there in the summer. And I called Cape May Mosquito Commission.
And that is because the standing water that collects within the tires becomes a mosquito breeding ground.
Yes, and there's snakes, like so many snakes out there. My dad's buildings, the garages, where the snakes shed their skin, and I've never seen skins. Anyway, I'm no exaggeration, 5 or 10 skins when we went through the warehouses and things. There's snakes out there a lot, and you know, just saying that the stagnant water, and they said that they had a guy out there was spraying. They said, the Cape May Mosquito Commission. But what's happening is the ground is growing up through the tires. The tires are just getting grown into this piece of land. And I mean, it's like, it's so clogged up. And because it's been so long, there was a fire there at one time, and they had a fire, you know how to cut the ditch so that they can put it out. And half of the tires like burned down the middle, but all the tires on the side. And I just wanted to see if there was any way that they could try to get it cleaned up. I heard they were putting tires into the asphalt now. The new asphalt company opened up near Ararat, near ACUA, and maybe that they're going to do something with tires, and that would be a whole bunch of tires that they could get into the recycling stream and put it into the asphalt, makes more asphalt. So I'm only bringing it to your attention because I didn't know where else to go, and I do have what the information you send to me, so I will also fill out the paperwork or whatever I have to do.
This is why we're here. So
Okay.
thank you. And
Right.
this is where you come with
Well, I
the
gotta
issue
give all-
that you don't know where else to go with. So I appreciate it very much. I would ask that if you're comfortable leaving your contact information with Nadia and Anna Maria, if you raise your hands in the back there, we'll
Right.
take that and we'll log it into our system ourselves. You don't have to fill out anything.
Okay.
And then if we have your information, we can get back to you
All right.
about what we find.
All right, thanks a lot.
Oh, I just have one quick question. So you said it's behind your house. Does that mean that it's not on a road, like it's hidden in the back?
It's, okay.
Or,
Our properties from our family go down a whole street, okay? Route 50 is here.
Okay.
Their property is on 50, but they had like 9 to 11 acres straight back, just a straight strip. So these tires are behind my grandmom's property, my dad's property, my cousin Bobby's property, and my aunt Phyllis's property, and then Aunt Nancy, who sold her property. But this property covers them all, and the tires is the whole way.
okay.
And can you give me a cross street or something?
It's Route 50 and Spruce Street,
Okay, thanks.
in Laureldale, Mays Landing.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful, because I think all three of the agencies in front of you could look into it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sorry that you and your family have to deal with that.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. My name is Brick, B-R-I-C-K, Wenzel, W-E-N-Z-E-L. I'm a commercial fisherman. I fish from Long Island to Delaware up to 100 miles offshore. Let me start off by saying, Sean, you're doing a fantastic job. You're one of the best commissioners we've had in the state of New Jersey for a very long period of time.
That's very kind. Thank you.
It's true. It's true. And Candace, I've been in your presence before. You're doing a great job. I'm looking forward to Lisa and Alex here and being able to come forward and say the same. So one of the issues that we have in the commercial fishing industry is our concerns with the offshore wind development. If you read the environmental impact studies, it is extremely disturbing, especially here in Atlantic City, where 40% of our clamming grounds are going to be lost.
Are you comfortable sharing what you fish commercially for? What is your?
I'm the largest license holder in commercial fishing industry, state of New Jersey, right? So I'm very diversified. And Sean, you know, New Jersey, we have over 200 different species. We have 4 of the top 20, 25 commercial fishing ports continental United States. I land fish from Belford to Cape May,
Okay.
and I have landed fish here in Atlantic City.
All right.
All right, so I've
Thank
been in
you.
the industry licensed since 1982. Actually,
And
I'm
you're
down here today. I just renewed my licenses.
And across species.
Yeah, one of the great things about New Jersey is we land fish all year round. A lot of other states don't have
Yeah.
that opportunity. So it's very important, especially when it comes to food security.
Yep. I tell
Right.
everybody who will listen that all
Yes.
that New England clam chowder they love so much, the clams are actually from New Jersey.
Absolutely. Yes, that's true. That's true. So, you know, I brag about the job you do because you know these things and you can see it in your presentations around the state. But to get back to the commercial fishing industry and the impacts of offshore wind, you mentioned about oil spills.
Yep.
We're looking at 2,000 gallons a year from the 2,100 turbines just off New Jersey. The consistency plan within state waters, federal waters, and I'm talking at a level that some people might not understand.
I understand.
So, these are going to come to shore. When I 4 years ago, we were up off Asbury Park. The governor had signed a declaration about offshore oil
Right.
and energy development. I was in that picture, representing the commercial fishing industry. And one of the concerns was also marine mammals.
Yep.
And how important that was to the state's tourism industry. Well, you've probably seen just within the last couple of weeks, the head NOAA scientist in reference to marine mammals is saying that the humpback whale may become extinct because of the development of offshore wind and the impacts. And it's the secondary impacts, right? It's the loss of the benthic animals and the squid population, right? And these people doing the development, they don't have all permits for all these different fisheries, and the impacts that they're going to have are not built into the fisheries management plans, right? So there is extreme concerns within the commercial fishing industry, and I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure you've heard it at the
I've heard
EPA,
it.
right, about the fast-paced development that is happening here. Now, I don't want to take away from, the ideology that it's important that we start addressing climate change, but at the same time, the way it's being developed is economics are over the environment, right? Because when we testify at these hearings, they say, well, we can't cut too many turbines out because then the development site won't be economically feasible to develop, right? You've heard that. I'm sure everybody in this room has heard that in the past. If these companies, who are leasing these sites, right, find that it's not economically feasible, we should be saying, okay, it's not economically feasible because of the impacts, whether it be environmental, et cetera. So there has to be a way for these people who've made the investment to develop these areas to step back, right? And that I don't see that being there. And then we're also the mitigation, right? So mitigation is really important. We've heard a couple different opportunities to mitigate the impacts to the commercial fishing industry, the most impacted industry, blue water economy industry from the offshore wind development. Those mitigation funds have been delayed, understandably, right? It's not until the first sale of the electricity that they're going to start putting that money aside. I get it, right? That makes sense, right? But at the same time, those impacts are already being felt. Right? We are weekly meetings right now talking about mitigation, who's going to handle the money, how much money is going to be. And when you look at Department of Interior and who's going to handle those funds, we as in the commercial fishing industry are very much against Department of Interior handling those funds. Now, I know they've talked about BSEE, right? The Bureau of Science, Energy, Environment, and Enforcement. That's the landlord determining how much money is going to be paid out. And in order to meet the executive order from the president, right, not the last two presidents, right, on the Democratic Party, their executive orders include, there is a financial constraint, right? So the states who've already signed purchase agreements have already exceeded the amount of money invested in the development of these projects, especially with the inflation rates, as some of those contracts are already null and void or have to be renegotiated now. Right? I don't know, I'm talking a little bit of circles here, but
I gotcha.
yeah, okay. So the concern is that if we start enforcing these environmental regulations, which should be enforced, right, that these areas will not be economically viable. When they start paying the economic damages or the damages to the mitigation funds, they're not going to be economically viable, right? And I get it between the blending in the different regions for the utility companies, and they're going to try to blend the rate so that the ratepayers aren't going to get hammered because the offshore wind is such a highest expense. Right, but again, they're putting the financial concerns over the environmental concerns. So when I think the way to describe it is, you've heard somebody stand up here and talk about the old the old sites, right? The old pollution sites, the Superfund sites, right? Where industry took place, and we have this now years down the road up in Ocean County at Ciba-Geigy, you're dealing with that now, right? Terrible health concerns in that area. Well, we're seeing that here with the development of the offshore wind industry. It's moving too fast. And I talked about whales, right? But also down here, down South Jersey, one of the things is the red knot, right?
We know all about the red knot.
The red knot is, the vital concern for the red knot is the horseshoe crab.
Yep.
Right? Well, the electromagnetic fields, right, the EMFs from the cables, are going to affect the horseshoe crabs. And by the way, horseshoe crabs aren't crabs, they're actually in the spider family, in case anybody didn't know that, right? So
They're super cool.
They're super cool, but the skipjack site off of Delaware Bay, there's
That's
different-
not a
there's-
New Jersey site. That's the
Yes, but the cables are coming up into the Delaware, right? So you can say that it's, and also our new development site off in Cumberland.
in Salem.
In
Yep.
Salem, right? Salem is going to be supplying that. The point is that the crabs, that skipjack site, is the wintering ground for the horseshoe crab, right? So the fast-paced development, which New Jersey is supporting, right, is going to have huge environmental impacts and secondary impacts in communities like Atlantic City. The commercial fishing industry, we're not recreational anglers, right? We feed the institutionalized, the handicapped, the elderly, right? The people who can't afford to go out and catch the fish. And we know how important seafood is in the diets of individuals. The impacts that's going to happen in New Jersey from a fast-paced development is going to affect the amount of seafood coming to our shore. When I understand that there's movement to put aquaculture into these sites. Aquaculture now is the lead agency for aquaculture is Department of Interior now on the federal level. That was heard, 2 years ago down in the 3rd District, right, where that was now moved into. So, but aquaculture plays a vital part for seafood being distributed in the United States and around the world, but we still need to have the commercial fish landings as the base, because the commercial fish landings doesn't go up and down anymore. It's basically stagnant. The increase in the world population is requiring on aquaculture to fill that void. If you're going to be, if the industrial offshore wind industry is taking tens of thousands of acres, right, off the table for effort, right, and fish landings, that we are going to end up having a shortage in the amount of seafood, affecting the people who we as an industry feed, right? Again, institutionalized, handicapped, elderly, those individuals who can't do it themselves.
I understand. So
Go ahead.
So before you respond to Brick, let me
yes.
just read a commenter that we got
Okay.
in the chat that has a similar related question.
Okay.
We can just take it both at the same time. So this person says, I am a resident of Egg Harbor Township. I have been attending the offshore wind hearings. It seems to me that many people are worried about the implications of offshore wind at this proposed scale. The Marine Mammal Center has reported 5 juvenile endangered whales stranded in a couple of weeks. Is there any idea if these standings are related to offshore wind surveying, since it has been admitted that there may be impacts to the whale community? I'd love to see more efforts to address this. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I will, just in the interest of making sure everybody has an opportunity to speak, I will tell you, as I'm sure maybe you've heard me say before, that I take these issues incredibly seriously. Now, the state of New Jersey, the Department of Environmental Protection, within which is the Division of Fish and Wildlife, including the Marine Fisheries Administration, we have a particular role to play within the overall offshore wind ecosystem. We have a particular amount of concern and weight that we can bring to the dialogue. And so do other states, and then so does the federal government, right? It's a complex administrative I don't want to call it a maze, but it's a jigsaw puzzle.
I'll help.
Right?
7 presidential cabinet positions deal with fisheries.
Yes, it is. It's incredibly complicated
yes.
now. The place and why I have made a point of telling all of the interested commercial fishing and recreational, but I understand the interests are different, that they have a place at the table with the DEP because it is incumbent upon us in our review processes, in our commentary with the federal government and decisions that they will make to offer our view on whether or not the federal action, which in this instance would be permitting an offshore wind development, is achieving consistency with state policy, right? And so that is why during the hearings that you are, that I think you're referencing, they have to do with Ocean Wind 1, the project at issue for permitting before DEP right now, we'll have to account for some of these issues. Now, we can't account for all of them because not all of it occurs in state waters. But it is important to us that we ensure that there's a seat at the table for the commercial fishing interest, and we're doing everything that we can within our power, however limited that may be, to advance what is a natural resource management imperative. And by that I mean, it's not that the DEP or our sub-agencies are on the side of the commercial fishing industry or any other industry for that matter. We are on the side of the resource itself. And so when something is harmful to the resource, we have to make sure that we are trying to achieve the best balance or encouraging others to achieve the best balance. And one of the ways that we do that is not just through the permitting process, but through the interstate dialogue around issues of mitigation and compensation for potential impacts. What we don't know today, there is no impact today, there is no offshore wind today, and there won't be an offshore wind turbine twisting in the ocean for some time. But we have to try to project and anticipate as much as we can and inform the dialogue around how one avoids impacts, minimizes impacts where they can't be avoided, and mitigates them where they can't be minimized. And so to that end, there is forthcoming an interstate plan on fisheries compensation that will be, there's a scoping document that's being put out, and if the press release hasn't, if it hasn't come out, it's soon. And so that is the next point of engagement that I think is really critical for your coalition. And every opportunity that is available in the context of our permitting environment, which pertains to both the development and then the cabling. And so there is, I understand that you're in meetings all the time, but it's because of how seriously we take it and that there are multiple avenues to engage, and that your comments, where they may not be responded to in every single hearing, they will be at the time that we have to make a decision one way or the other.
So thank you for that. Just a quick follow-up. Food insecurity is not being addressed as much as it should be. It's great to have the commercial fisher at the table. There is nobody coming from these communities testifying on behalf of those people who are food insecure. Just so you know, I founded America's Glean Seafood. I wrote the United States Seafood Gleaning Program proposal, right? So we're looking at 33 states where we take our bycatch and get it to those in need. It's a food security issue that is not being addressed at the table. So if you can make sure that happens, that would be appreciated.
I appreciate your pointing that out. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. So I want to go to Joe Kayati. You're online, and I think that you have a question. So you can feel free to unmute yourself at this time, and we'll listen. We can't hear you if you're speaking. We can't hear you if you're speaking, so please unmute yourself. If not, we can come back to you. Back to you, Joe. We'll come back to you, Joe. Okay, please.
Just this mic first, taller ladies. My name is Kathleen Spaeth. I live in Linwood in Atlantic County. I come here today to ask specifically if you can answer whether the new environmental justice laws have any place or any impact on the different cannabis facilities that are being proposed, specifically the manufacturing and the distribution. There is a proposal right now in Pleasantville. There is a facility there in Pleasantville, but there is a proposal going in front of the planning board to amend that site plan and also to subdivide that land, and the facility will be larger. So is that under your purview, Commissioner? And does that get reviewed by your department and then also by the new Environmental Justice Department?
So like many an answer, it depends, and I'll tell you on what. So what the environmental justice law that we've been talking about pertains to are 8 types of facilities, depending on the types of permits that they need. And that can include major sources of air pollution. Some manufacturing facilities could have enough output to qualify as a major source of air pollution. So I don't know the particular facility that you're talking about. It is certainly possible, but I wouldn't look only to the environmental justice law as an opportunity to engage with the Department of Environmental Protection around any facility, cannabis included, that you may be concerned about. Depending on the type of facility, they differ, of course. A cannabis facility, if it is a grower, if it is a manufacturer, there would be a number of environmental permits that could be required. And so a facility may need air pollution control equipment, whether it's a major or minor source of air pollution. It may need water allocation permitting because these facilities do use a large amount of water. There will be wastewater implications. There will be solid waste implications. Whether or not it is subject to the environmental justice law in particular, it would be subject to environmental law generally.
Okay.
And so that is an opportunity for review and public engagement.
All right, then I'm going to get a little more specific here, and I appreciate your general answering of the question. So there is a site plan and subdivision 1, 2, and 3 that has been filed with the city of Pleasantville and is for RGC. So that's Robert George Cat, which I don't believe that's what it stands for, but it's just easier to tell you. The letter 3 LLC. There is an existing facility there right now, and they are looking to expand that facility and to double that facility. So I would like to know if the environmental justice law has any impact on that facility, and then also what environmental laws that we as citizens should be looking at to make sure that that facility follows those environmental laws. So if there is any environmental impact on that property itself and the neighborhood and the surrounding Atlantic County.
So I don't know off the top of my head, and again, I'm not saying that because I don't want to answer you. It's because I usually would not know of a particular permit application. There are thousands every year. What is important to understand is the distinction between the local government's role in the siting of any facility, cannabis or otherwise, and the Department of Environmental Protection's role. It is often the case that whether it is a mall or a housing development or a recreational complex or a cannabis facility or any other facility, that a developer or a business would pursue local approvals before coming to the Department of Environmental Protection. That's often a mistake because as any as a business owner, you would want to get input from all the government agencies that may have jurisdiction over your activities together at the same time or at least concurrently. I have no idea if that has what has occurred here, but my suggestion to any resident would be to inquire of your local representatives, whether it's your planning board or your municipal council or whoever it is that is issuing approvals, whether or not they have required that the DEP be consulted, and that any approvals from the DEP any necessary approvals from the DEP be identified, so that the local governments are aware of those. It's important. The local government is only part of the story if state approvals are also required.
I'm just going to make a general comment in that. What I've come to discover, and I don't mean to disparage the city of Pleasantville, but what I've come to discover is that area in particular on Devon's Lane, and there are a few other areas in that area of Pleasantville, it's called an economic recovery zone. So a lot of times what happens is an application comes in. It could be for a cannabis manufacturing facility. It could be to expand such a project that's there right now. It could be to build a transfer station, a rail transfer station. And I'm noticing on a local level, and I say this because I'm from the state of Massachusetts originally, and I've come here to New Jersey, and I notice on a local level, a lot of the cities and towns and the townships sort of think about what can we get economically from that project. And they don't always think about what the impact is going to be on environmentally, and also what the impact is going to be in the surrounding communities and towns if that project is approved. And I don't mean to disparage the city of Pleasantville, because we have some issues in Linwood as well, and so does Cape May, and so does Mays Landing. But I've just noticed that nobody seems to talk to each other. And you've got the city council in Pleasantville feeling one way, then you've got the planning board feeling another way, and then you've got the state feeling another way. I really would like to see a little more cooperation. And if the applicant, and I feel bad also for the applicant too, that the applicant has to go through all of these levels, right? So wouldn't it be nice if we could have a hearing where everyone's in the room all at the same time, all talking to each other, which I appreciate that's what you're doing tonight.
I agree with you.
It would be so much easier.
I agree with you, and I will tell you that there is, at the DEP, because the DEP has so many different jobs, there are 8 different sub-agencies within the DEP that do different things. Some do waste, some do air, some do issues of wetlands, some do issues of environmental justice. So what we have within the DEP is what we call sort of this umbrella office that's called the Office of Permitting and Project Navigation. And an applicant can bring a project to that office, and it will coordinate all the government instrumentalities involved around one table to achieve what you are saying. But that is it is voluntary. But what you're recognizing is a structural issue within government itself.
Yes, I know. So I guess making a comment, it would be nice if everyone all worked on the same application so that it wasn't piecemeal, and so that way all of the residents could be informed of the application, because there's some residents who feel like they haven't been getting enough information. And also they feel like they haven't been heard as well. So I'm very excited about this new environmental justice law going into effect, and I'm hoping that maybe that's going to have an impact. Because I don't see, unfortunately, that historically sometimes those residents aren't listened to. And I understand the cities and the towns need economic revenue. And I also understand that as a property owner myself, I have a right within the zoning laws to build just like they do. We have to try to find a balance here, and I don't see that sometimes in some communities. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Neither do I, and we'll do everything in our power to try to build more cooperation. It's hard, but we will keep at it.
And just so that I understand tonight you have to be as general as possible. You don't know enough about these projects to make comments. Just if you could reiterate again tonight how people can reach out to the DEP and do it also not only in English but in Spanish, so people can reach out to you, because you are a very approachable DEP commissioner, and I say kudos to you, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll make sure folks have all the accessibility information at the conclusion of this event. So thank you.
So we just have a few minutes left. I want to kick it back to you, Joe Kayotti, online, if you can unmute yourself at this time. Go. We can hear you, yes.
Appreciate it. Some interesting investigations with the DEP. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the environmental injustice that's occurring by way of our farmers in the state of New Jersey. Actually, across the country, but particularly in the state of New Jersey. I know this has been a trying situation for the DEP as well as myself and several other individuals that are concerned about the aquifer, the pinelands, the wetlands of the state of New Jersey, which is probably, or is hopefully still somewhat pristine. These farmers have been leaching septic and gray water, black water into the environment, as I'm sure you're all well aware of. I've been fighting this for over 10 years. I've reported numerous farmers, I've reported numerous wells, and the only action anyone's taken thus far, is only wells, and only one particular one. No one has actually enforced anything. They've only done notices of violations. There's a lot of politics involved here. There's no there's housing for these migrant workers. There's no certificate of occupancies. There's absolutely no sprinkler systems. There's no safety for these people. There's no proper bathrooms. They have commercial kitchens, and the Atlantic County in particular, as well as the state of New Jersey Department of Health, are all beating to the drum of the Department of Agriculture, and they're getting away with absolute environmental murder. These people live, I wouldn't put a foreign animal in the housing that these poor minorities have been put in. It's people of Haitian descent, Vietnamese in some cases, and also many Spanish. I've been fighting this. I've been fighting carve-outs and bills for, a little off the track, but just to show you how much I am passionate about this. Minimum wage carve-outs in the minimum wage bill, where they don't get the same minimum wage. This state holds itself out as a environmentally conscious, friendly champion of the environment, a sanctuary state. They care about minorities, and I've watched quite the opposite. I hear a really good show here tonight. I don't know you, Sean. I'm hoping to get to know you. I hope we can talk. We've got to clean this mess up. We've got to get the politics and these courts, these corrupted courts, out of this. We need to get the governor's attention, okay? I'm involved in several lawsuits involving these issues, okay? And I'm not going to stop. Perhaps the next one is a federal RICO, okay? We're either going to clean this up, we're going to make this housing correct, we're going to do the right thing, okay? I'm not going away. I am not going to go away. And to come on and do these public displays of how we're going to do this and how we're going to take, I have a proposed bill that many members of the Assembly were going to do, where they're going to take urban housing funds, and you may not even know about this, and they were going to use it, Sean, for people, for minorities that need this money in urban areas and all. They're going to use it from multi-million-dollar farmers who are getting millions of dollars a year before they even get on their tractors for water conservation, soil conservation, new equipment, and they're going to take money from these poor individuals who and senior citizens that need this money for their homes, for proper housing, and they were going to use it, Sean, to correct illegal farm storage-only structures to convert them into, which they can't, it's an agricultural production zone, and they're R2 dwellings. They're actually hotels where 60 to a couple hundred people a year are being housed in these things. I had Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver actually write an administrative appeal and allow these camps to stay open, knowing there was no certificate of occupancies, knowing that they were in proper housing. And then what do they come out with now? I read an article in the Politico where hey, the DEP just went after a guy and they banged him for an improper well. Well, you know what's important to know? That poor guy that got hit for that one well violation, by the way, that I reported back in 2013, that guy just happens to be a competitor at one time with one of the biggest brokers in Atlantic County in the state of New Jersey, okay, who's tied to federal judges and state judges that are retired, the one now, and he's getting away with all kinds of environmental crimes, okay? I had a farm worker die on a farm last year, and the Hamilton police didn't even know how the body wound up at Atlantic County. So this is bad, okay? This is really bad, and I know you know who I am. My name is known up there.
Okay. Let me respond back over there, and you can.
I can't wait.
Can you do a recap?
I don't think everybody was able to hear what the speaker online was saying, and I'll be honest and say that I couldn't make out every word myself. Can we repeat the gentleman's name?
Joe,
I constantly strive for general truthiness.
Joe Kayati.
Joe Kayati. And Mr. Kayati, you mentioned that I know who you are. I don't, but I'm happy to get to know who you are. And I'm not sure that I caught everything you were saying, but I'd invite you to write a letter to summarize. There were many issues that you were referencing. All of them sounded to be related to the state of migrant worker housing and related environmental issues that the migrant worker community may be exposed to, given the setting that given the living circumstances that are provided by the hosting farm. That is the majority of what I took away. It sounded like there were also potential issues with the quality of water being provided to the migrant worker community by certain farms, and he spoke very fast, so I was not able to understand everything. But Mr. Kayati, I again welcome you to sort of detail your concerns in a letter so that we can be directly responsive. A couple of points on what the DEP has evaluated and continues to evaluate in the context of the migrant worker experience on some southern Jersey farms, particularly on blueberry farms. We have engaged with the hosting farms around their obligations under the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act, and the expectations that the DEP would have. We did have to pursue at least one lawsuit recently for a non-compliant blueberry farm. The concerns that I most recently recall dealing with were related to overflowing septic tanks that could then leach into potable groundwater wells for groundwater that is then serving as a source of drinking water to that migrant worker community. And of course, none of that is acceptable. Every person in this state, whether you are here as a guest worker to aid our farms, or whether you are a resident of the city of Atlantic City dealing with failing water infrastructure, every single person is entitled to clean water, period, full stop. And we will continue to pursue those circumstances that we are aware of where that is not the case. And I invite you, sir, to point out ones you think we may not be aware of, and we will follow up on them.
Yeah,
Thank
and we also, sorry, I was just going to say with farm workers, I know that there's this split between Department of Labor and OSHA with hazardous workers. The EPA actually has the worker protection standard for farm workers. So, so it'd be great if you did maybe share a letter, and we can look into what the federal government is able to review and look at also. So, thanks for raising these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so with that, we'll take this time to wrap up with a couple of points. First, to just say thank you so much for showing up tonight. We really appreciate your gathering and taking the time to let us know about your experiences, about your concerns, letting us know of the questions that you have. It means a lot. And I hope that if anything else, the one thing that you walk away with is that we are serving to be a point of relationship and connectivity into your communities in Atlantic County. So if there is ever an issue that you'd like to raise to our attention, you know who we are, you know more about what the department does, and please know that the Office of Environmental Justice is wanting to listen to you, and also serving as a point of connectivity into the various channels and agencies and departments within state government, and to connect you to our partners at the federal government. And so I just want to read off our website and our email address so that you know how to contact us. So the email is environmentaljustice@dep.nj.gov. So environmentaljustice@dep.nj.gov. And our website is dep.nj.gov/EJ. dep.nj.gov/EJ. So I'll pass it to my panel for any last remarks.
Ms. Lisa?
Great. So thank you so much, everyone who joined us today in person, and obviously the folks online also. I think, as Candace just said, this is about relationship building and connectivity. So even though maybe we won't be here every day, we want you to know that we're always available, to answer questions. It's great that people brought some of the issues and concerns, but also share it with your friends and family that we are here, we want to listen, and if things come up, we want to hear more. And so we will definitely take some of these things back and figure out how we can partner together, address them, work on them, and get back to folks. But like I said, if things come up in the future or questions remain that maybe you didn't think of tonight, please feel free to reach out. So I really appreciate the opportunity to join the commissioner tonight, New Jersey DEP, to be able to be here, and of course, all of you here. So thank you again.
So I'll just wrap by saying thank you to our Office of Environmental Justice, to Director Perry, and to the team that made all of this possible, that helped to engage folks, to help bring you here today, to Councilman for your partnership, and to Second Baptist for being such gracious hosts, and we'll connect back again with the Reverend. Those of you who joined and didn't have something to say or share, and you just listened, if you want to grab one of us after, you can. Sometimes, you sort of go and you feel a place out and you see if you want to raise something or not. And if you don't, it's okay. One of the things that I also want to share is that how much we appreciate in the state the partnership from the Biden and Harris administration, from your administration in particular, regional administrator, and your commitment to New Jersey. and making sure that you're here hearing from residents of our state. I know you cover a lot of territory. So the last thing I'll say is for our audience, which is the reason we do this is because our job is to serve you, right? That's our job is to better protect your environment and your health. That is the work that we do. And if we don't hear from you, we're not doing it completely because we need to understand what your experience is, so don't be shy. And remember that the environment, our air, our land, our water, our natural resources, our fisheries, all of it, it doesn't belong to the government, right? It belongs directly to the people, and it is just our job to take good care of it for you. So thank you for helping us to do that better. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.